Well, as a kid growing up in Canada, even though I lived in a small town of about 1,200 people, we were right on the edge of town, right up against the forest. And the forest went for 30 miles or so. And I spent all my time in the woods. And I just grew up with this deep respect for the forest and for nature. And I love to collect bugs and animals and all that. And I mean, if I could have, I would have wanted to be a First Nation, guy if I could have. So I never lost that. And then as I grew up and in my teenage years and then in my young adulthood, really realizing what was happening around the world, and I saw it as kind of two things together. The plight of so many indigenous cultures who are being displaced and have their lives and their livelihoods degraded by development and expansion and so on. And at the same time, what that's doing to the natural world as well. And as someone who loves the ocean, seeing how the ocean is being destroyed and depleted and so on, I sort of put that together in my mind as just this general sense that civilization and business and industry are not taking care of Mother Earth and the people who respect her most. And so Avatar was my response to that as an artist, as a filmmaker. And I don't think I could have expected the resonance that it's had around the world. But so I made my big statement, right? I spent my 4.5 years saying it, and I thought, okay, now I get to relax. Quite the opposite. Now, all the NGOs and the groups that are dealing with indigenous rights and with these issues have come to me over the last 6 or 7 months and said, not all of them, but many, and said, what you did in the film reflects, the reality that we're having to deal with. Is there anything that we can do together to help raise consciousness and so on? And I thought, I can't reap the benefit of this wonderful success from this movie without taking on the responsibility of the meaning. And so I've said, all right, if I can help, I will. Let's figure out a way to be constructive, because I'm a filmmaker, so I'm not a scientist. I'm not properly trained and credentialed in a lot of these things. So I do what I can, which is to communicate, which is to tell a story, and which is to put people together. Sometimes it's meeting with scientists and with business people and with First Nations leaders or Indigenous leaders, and trying to find some common ground. It's a little, it's almost like a diplomatic role at times, but really ultimately it's about letting the public know what's happening, because they're the ones that have to create the mandate for our leaders, whether it's in the US or whether it's in Canada or down in Brazil or wherever around the world. The leaders have to be responsible to what the public wants, and the public has to want this. They have to understand the meaning of it and why it's important. Right. Well, I think the indigenous people have their finger on the pulse of nature. That's their culture, going back thousands of years. It's how many of them still live today, with traditional diet, hunting and fishing, and so on. When something's happening negative to the mother, they know. And they're our canary in the coal mine. They're the people that are going to cry out first and say that something bad's happening here. And we as the so-called civilized industrial world, we need to listen. And it's so, unfortunately, the history of it is that the indigenous people are not listened to. They don't have a place at the table. They're even though they're stakeholders in all these big developments and so on, because they're the ones that are directly affected very often. They're not at the table when the key decisions are made, when the oil leases are given out, when the dam is approved, and all of these things. And we need to evolve into a world where indigenous people's rights are protected, and more importantly, where they are respected. I think that's critical. We need to, if we can't respect nature directly, then let's respect their understanding of nature. Well, I think that the louder and more organized their voice can be, the better. And I think that it's great that we have the Office of National Chief, let's say, who can get 600 different peoples in Canada together to speak with one voice, or at least to work together on issues that affect them all. I think that some kind of unified voice is very important, because everyone is being affected by development and urban growth and pollution and all of these environmental issues. So and I think media plays a role in that, and I'm happy to play my little part in trying to get these messages out. Well, I think one lesson that can be learned very quickly is sustainable practice. The indigenous community in British Columbia really revolutionized the logging, the lumbering business, and have introduced ideas of sustainability in forestry. I think that these sustainable practices can be learned from the indigenous community, or at least industry and business can evolve toward sustainable practices with their input.